So imagine you are standing at a literal dirt crossroads, right?
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Yeah, and it's ancient Greece. The sun is just bedding down on you. The dust is swirling around your ankles, and you are completely exhausted.
Right, sounds pretty miserable, honestly.
Exactly. And you're this young man who hasn't really achieved anything of note yet. You are just trying to figure out what to do with your life.
Like a lot of us, yeah.
Right. And suddenly, these two women approach you on the path. Now, the first woman is just breathtaking. She is dripping in gold and fine silks, and she walks up to you with this incredibly alluring proposition.
Okay, I'm listening.
She says, follow my path, and you will never know want. You will never feel fear. You will never, ever experience pain or exhaustion again.
Wow.
Right. Your entire existence will be this unbroken chain of absolute ease, luxury, and fulfilled desires. It is like the ultimate offer of a completely frictionless life.
That is the original life hack right there. Just total comfort, zero effort.
But then the second woman steps forward, and she isn't wearing gold. She's wearing this plain, rough-spun white tunic. Her face is stern, and her pitch is, well, it's the exact opposite.
Oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, she looks you right in the eye and says, if you follow me, I offer you absolutely no shortcuts. I promise you a long, grueling journey. You will face terrifying moments. You will sacrifice your comfort, and you will bleed.
Not exactly a great sales pitch.
No, but, and this is the kicker, she says, but it is a journey fit for a god. It will bring you true glory, and it is the only way you will become the person you are actually meant to be.
Ah, I see.
Right, and this isn't just some random thought experiment. This is the ancient myth of Hercules at the crossroads.
Yeah.
And that hesitation he feels in the dust, that agonizing moment before he actually chooses the hard path of virtue, is literally the exact same battle happening in our own heads the moment our alarm clock goes off every single morning.
It really is the eternal human dilemma. The ancient Greeks mapped it out so beautifully because they understood that human psychology just hasn't changed.
Not at all.
We all have that battle between what we can get away with, the path of least resistance, and the should, which is the demanding path of our highest potential.
Right.
It is fought daily.
Yeah.
And that choice is really the focal point of the sources we are unpacking today. We are taking a really comprehensive, deep dive into the source material, specifically Ryan Holiday's book, Discipline is Destiny.
Which is just a fantastic text.
It really is. It's a masterful exploration of the Stoic approach to self-control. It focuses heavily on the cardinal virtue of temperance. And, the way the material breaks this down is deeply practical.
Yeah, it really makes it accessible.
Right, because it moves from mastering our physical bodies to ruling our internal temperament, and then finally to elevating our soul in our actual interactions with the world.
Well, and I think we need to address something right up front. When we throw around a word like discipline today, it comes with a lot of baggage.
Oh, absolutely. Tons
Yeah.
of baggage.
Right. Like people hear it and they immediately think of a drill sergeant screaming in their face. Or they picture this life of miserable gray deprivation where you aren't allowed to eat carbs or enjoy a weekend ever again.
Right, it feels like a cage.
Exactly. But the Stoic framework completely upends that. There's this quote in our source material from Dwight D. Eisenhower that it stops you in your tracks.
Mhm.
He argued that freedom is actually only the opportunity for self-discipline.
I love that quote.
It's so good, right?
Hmm.
If you really think about that, it completely flips the modern definition of freedom on its head.
It really forces us to ask what it actually means to be free. Because, we live in an era of unprecedented liberty and historical abundance.
Oh, yeah.
For a large portion of the population, you can eat essentially whatever you want, whenever you want. You can stream endless entertainment. You can buy things with a single click.
Literally from your couch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you lack self-control in the face of all that abundance, are you actually free? The Stoic argument is a definitive no.
No, you're a slave to it.
Right. If you cannot regulate your scrolling, you are a slave to an algorithm. If you cannot regulate your temper, well, you're a slave to your own biology.
And if you can't regulate your spending, you're a slave to debt.
Precisely. True discipline isn't about building a prison around yourself. It's the actual mechanism that allows you to steer your own ship, rather than just being tossed around by external currents and internal impulses.
Which really brings us to the most tangible place to start taking control, right? The physical body.
Yes.
The exterior.
It makes complete sense that mastering the physical form is the baseline. I mean, it's our vehicle. You could have the most brilliant mind, the most compassionate soul, the most innovative business ideas in the world.
Yeah.
But if you are constantly fighting your own physical exhaustion or brain fog, or you have this dependency on sugar and caffeine just to get to 2 in the afternoon,
Right.
you simply cannot actualize any of that potential.
Because the physical realm is the ultimate proving ground for discipline. The feedback loop is just immediate and undeniable.
Yeah, your body doesn't lie. It doesn't. If you don't intentionally dominate yourself physically through movement and restraint, well, entropy and atrophy are going to dominate you. The universe just naturally tends toward disorder.
That's so true.
And to really illustrate what total physical mastery looks like, the text presents a case study that borders on the superhuman. We're talking about Lou Gehrig.
Oh, man. The Iron Horse of baseball.
Yes.
Even if you don't follow sports at all, the numbers alone are just staggering. Lou Gehrig played 2,130 consecutive games for the New York Yankees.
Over 17 years.
17 years. But I think we really have to contextualize what playing over 2,000 consecutive games actually meant in the 1920s and 30s.
Oh, for sure.
Because this wasn't the modern era of sports science.
Not at all. I mean, modern athletes have, cryogenic chambers, hyperbaric oxygen therapy.
Personalized nutritionists monitoring every macro.
Exactly. And they have chartered luxury jets where they can sleep in full-size beds at 30,000 feet. Gehrig's era was defined by grueling 152-game seasons, played in heavy, stifling wool uniforms.
In the dead of the East Coast summer, wool.
Right, wool uniforms in August in New York. And travel meant days on bumpy, non-air-conditioned trains. You were just eating whatever random food was available at the station.
And the physical toll that takes is just incomprehensible. The source material details how Gehrig played through migraines that would leave most people in a dark room crying.
Yeah.
He played through severe fevers. He played through lumbago, which is this crippling lower back pain where you can barely bend over to tie your shoes, let alone swing a heavy wooden bat at a major league fastball.
It's hard to even imagine.
But the detail that genuinely shocked me, like I actually gasped when I read this, was the x-rays.
Oh, the hands?
Yes. Toward the end of his career, doctors finally x-rayed his hands and they found 17 healed fractures.
Unbelievable.
17. Over the course of 17 years, he had broken almost every single finger on both of his hands.
And he never said a word.
He just never told the trainers, he didn't complain, he just taped them up and gripped the bat harder.
Which really culminates in that almost mythical story of him taking an 80-mile-per-hour fastball directly to the head.
Oh my gosh, right? And we have to remember, this is an era before batting helmets even existed. Getting hit in the head with a baseball going that speed, that is a potentially lethal event.
Yeah, people died from that.
It knocks him completely unconscious at home plate. He is out cold for a full 5 minutes. The entire stadium thinks they've just watched a man die.
Right.
He finally comes to, walks off the field, and the general expectation is obviously he's going to the hospital for a month.
Naturally.
But what happens, he shows up to the ballpark the very next day.
Like it's nothing.
But the problem is, his head is so violently swollen from the impact that he physically cannot fit his own baseball cap onto his skull.
So what does he do? He just borrows Babe Ruth's hat. Because Ruth had a massive head.
That is amazing.
Right. He puts on this oversized, borrowed hat, steps into the batter's box, completely unbothered by the pitcher who nearly killed him the day before, and he hits 3 triples.
Okay, so I have to play devil's advocate here for a second, though.
Go for it.
Because when a normal person hears a story like that, I feel like the immediate psychological defense mechanism kicks in, right?
Right.
The instinct is to say, well, the guy was just a genetic freak. He was an anomaly of nature. Some people are just born built like tanks, and he won the genetic lottery. It has nothing to do with discipline. It's just his DNA.
And it is deeply comforting to write off greatness as genetic luck, isn't it? Because that absolves the rest of us from actually having to try.
Exactly. It lets me off the hook.
But the source text systematically dismantles that assumption. Gehrig was not some naturally coordinated, graceful athlete who just rolled out of bed hitting triples.
Wait, really?
Yeah, I mean, when he was born, he was a massive 14-pound baby, sure. But as he grew into a child, he was notably awkward, very clumsy. One of his boyhood friends actually went on record joking that Gehrig's body behaved as if it were constantly drunk. He was tripping over his own feet all the time.
Wow. So how does a clumsy, uncoordinated kid manufacture the physical durability of the Iron Horse?
The mechanism was sheer, intentional psychological rebellion.
Rebellion.
Yes, which manifested as physical discipline. Gehrig was the son of poor German immigrants, and his father was a notorious drinker. He was a man who constantly made excuses, complained about ailments, and routinely took sick days from work just to go to the saloon.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
Yeah. So Gehrig felt this profound, burning shame regarding his father's lack of dependability. But on the flip side, he absolutely worshipped his mother. She worked herself to the bone as a cook and a laundress just to keep the family from starving.
Okay, so he's looking at these two completely opposite examples in his house.
Exactly. So young Lou Gehrig made a conscious decision. He decided he would become the absolute antithesis of his father. He joined a local Turnverein, which was a German gymnastics and calisthenics club, and he systematically, painfully built his own body.
Through sheer willpower.
Right. He spent thousands of hours building the massive trunk and those tree trunk legs that eventually allowed him to generate such immense power at the plate. His discipline was a living tribute to his mother's work ethic and a total outright rejection of his father's fragility.
Man, that completely reframes his entire career for me. He famously said, "I am a slave to baseball," but he wasn't complaining.
Not at all.
It was this willing, joyful submission to his craft. He treated his body as a tool that he forged in the fire of his own willpower so it could withstand the brutal punishment of his ambition.
Beautifully put.
And to truly understand why that level of discipline is so critical, the text offers this really stark contrast. It holds up what it calls the strenuous life against the gluttonous life.
The gluttonous life is such a fascinating exploration of what happens when power and resources are entirely decoupled from self-control.
It's scary, honestly.
It is. King George IV of England is the historical case study here. Here is a man who occupied one of the highest stations on the planet. And he genuinely believed his royal status just sort of exempted him from the biological laws of human health.
His daily diet is, it reads like a satirical cartoon.
It really does.
Just for breakfast. Just breakfast. He would consume 2 full pigeons, 3 massive beefsteaks, an entire bottle of wine, and a glass of brandy just to top it off.
The physiological mechanics of processing that amount of rich food and alcohol before noon, it's devastating. The human liver and the cardiovascular system can only take so much abuse.
Especially in the 19th century.
Right. And he ballooned in weight so drastically that the fat surrounding his chest cavity became a lethal threat. He eventually reached a point where he literally could no longer sleep lying down in a bed.
Because of the weight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The sheer gravity of his own chest weight would literally crush his lungs and suffocate him. So he had to sleep sitting completely upright.
That is just horrifying. And it actually impacted his actual duties as a monarch.
Tremendous.
Because he grew so lethargic and physically immobile that he couldn't even muster the physical energy to sign state documents. They had to manufacture a rubber stamp of his signature because the King of England was too full of steak and brandy to hold a pen.
It's a tragic image.
He treated his physical vessel like a garbage disposal and died a miserable, agonizing death. But, we don't even have to look to 19th century kings to see this. We can look right back into the Yankees' dugout sitting right next to Lou Gehrig.
Babe Ruth.
Babe Ruth!
Babe Ruth is such an incredible foil to Gehrig. Ruth was arguably the most naturally talented baseball player to ever live, but his lifestyle was defined by total intemperance.
The guy was a walking party.
The text breaks down a typical day of consumption for the Bambino, and it is shocking. Yeah. He would start his morning with a pint of whiskey mixed with ginger ale.
Breakfast of champions.
Right, followed by a massive platter of steaks, eggs, and potatoes. Then, for a mid-afternoon snack, he would casually eat 4 hot dogs and chug multiple bottles of Coca-Cola.
Oh, my stomach hurts just thinking about it.
It gets worse. Dinner wasn't one meal, it was 2 separate suppers. Each supper consisted of 2 thick porterhouse steaks, heaps of side dishes, and 2 entire apple pies.
The guy was once rushed to the emergency room mid-season simply because he ate too many hot dogs and drank too much soda, and his gastrointestinal tract just violently rebelled.
The famous bellyache heard round the world.
Yes. Now, obviously, Babe Ruth is a legend. He had 714 home runs. But the philosophical question the text raises, and I think it's a really painful one, is what greatness did Babe Ruth leave on the table?
That is the core question.
He routinely played at 240, 250 pounds. He was completely out of breath, literally sweating alcohol on the field. If a man with Ruth's transcendent natural gifts had possessed even 10% of Lou Gehrig's monk-like discipline, what could he have achieved?
It's the ultimate tragedy of unfulfilled potential. Intemperance doesn't always stop you from being good or even great,
Mm.
but it absolutely robs you of your ultimate ceiling.
Right.
Now, if we want to look at the other end of the spectrum, someone who actually used discipline to cure their own physical fragility, we look at Theodore Roosevelt.
Oh, this is a great example.
If anyone in history had a valid medical excuse to just sit on the couch and take it easy, it was Teddy Roosevelt.
Yes. Because we all picture him as this barrel-chested, rough-riding outdoorsman who, wrestles bears or whatever. But that is entirely a manufactured persona.
Completely manufactured.
He was born this sickly, fragile child suffering from crippling, severe asthma. And asthma attacks in the 19th century weren't just an inconvenience.
No, they were terrifying.
They were near-death experiences. A child would literally turn blue, gasping for air, while doctors basically stood there because they had no modern inhalers to save them. He spent his childhood propped up in a bed, suffocating.
And his father recognized that the boy's mind was brilliant, but his body was this failing cage. So his father sat him down and delivered this harsh but ultimately life-saving truth.
Yeah.
He essentially said, "You have the mind, but you do not have the body. You must make your body."
You must make your body.
And Roosevelt took that as a lifelong mandate. He fully embraced what he famously called the strenuous life. He didn't just exercise. He basically went to war with his own weakness.
He had his family build a rudimentary gymnasium on the back porch of their home. He lifted weights. He learned to box. He hiked mountains. He rode horses for hours on end.
Just sheer agonizing cardiovascular effort.
And what really blew my mind is that this wasn't just a phase in his 20s. Even when he reached the absolute pinnacle of global power serving as the President of the United States, he still dedicated 2 full hours every single day to intense physical exercise.
The logistics of that are really worth breaking down, I think.
Yeah, how does he do it?
How does the leader of the free world, who is dealing with global crises, congressional battles, and endless meetings, find 2 hours a day to work out?
Most of us can't find 20 minutes.
The answer is ruthless schedule management and prioritization. He understood that his physical vitality was the absolute prerequisite for his executive function. He wasn't working out instead of doing his job. He was working out so he could do his job with ferocity.
It entirely obliterates the modern excuse of, oh, I'm too busy to work out.
It really does.
If the President of the United States, running a country without modern computers or instant communication, can block off 2 hours for his physical vessel, you can find 30 minutes to go for a run.
Exactly.
And this concept of discipline extending to the physical realm doesn't just mean lifting heavy weights or running marathons. The material makes a highly compelling case that true physical discipline is actually deeply microscopic.
Yes.
It's about sweating the smallest possible details because those physical details dictate the macro output.
And the most vivid illustration of this is Coach John Wooden.
The legend.
We are talking about a man who won 10 NCAA national championships in a 12-year period at UCLA. He is recruiting the most elite, highly sought-after, frankly arrogant high school basketball prodigies in the entire country.
These kids think they are untouchable.
Right. And these kids show up to their very first collegiate practice expecting to, run complex offensive plays or scrimmage and show off.
Yeah.
And what does Wooden do?
It's so funny.
He sits them down in the locker room and teaches them how to put on their socks and shoes.
It sounds like a total joke. He's taking these 18-year-old giants and showing them how to pull a cotton sock over their heel.
Step by step.
He meticulously demonstrates how to smooth out the fabric around the little toe, how to ensure there are absolutely no wrinkles across the arch, and exactly how to pull the shoelaces so the tension is perfectly distributed across the top of the foot.
But if we examine the biomechanics and the cascading consequences of a wrinkled sock, Wooden's genius becomes completely apparent.
How so?
It's an exercise in preemptive discipline. Why does he care so much about the sock? Because a wrinkle in a sock rubbing against a sweaty foot for 2 hours of high-intensity basketball creates friction.
And friction creates a blister.
Exactly. And when a player has a painful blister on their left foot, what do?
They subconsciously alter their gait. They start favoring the right leg to avoid the pain.
Spot on. And when a 220-pound athlete is running at full speed and jumping, but placing all that torque on one favored leg, the kinetic chain breaks down.
The knee gives out.
The ACL tears. Now your star player is out for the season, and you lose the national championship. That's the old proverb, right? For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the kingdom was lost.
Wooden understood that the championship is literally won or lost in the wrinkles of the sock.
This maps perfectly onto the concept of mise en place in a professional culinary kitchen.
Oh, I love this analogy.
If a chef hasn't disciplined their physical environment, if the onions aren't chopped to the exact millimeter, if the salt isn't stationed in the exact right container, if the pans aren't stacked precisely, when that 7 p.m. dinner rush hits, the entire service collapses into absolute chaos.
Because you can't be looking for salt when the steaks are burning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The discipline, the physical setup, completely dictates the quality of the final product.
And we can apply this directly to the workspace, too. The sources introduce Robert Moses, the legendary and, very controversial master builder who shaped modern New York City.
Yes.
At the height of his power, Moses held 12 different municipal and state positions simultaneously.
12.
He was overseeing the construction of bridges, highways, parks, and massive housing developments all at once. How did his brain not just explode from the sheer volume of paperwork?
Well, he controlled his physical environment.
Exactly. He famously refused to use a traditional desk with drawers. Instead, he worked at a large, completely flat table.
The psychology behind that table is just brilliant. A traditional desk with drawers is basically an invitation to procrastinate.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind.
Right. If a difficult memo or a complex problem lands on a desk, the undisciplined instinct is to just open a drawer, toss the paper inside, close it, and say, I'll deal with that later.
We'd all done it.
But a massive flat table has nowhere to hide anything. If a problem landed on Moses' table, it was sitting right in front of him, visually demanding his attention.
Staring him down.
It forced a system of immediate processing.
Yeah.
He had to read it, make a decision, delegate it, or throw it away just to get it out of his physical space.
And if you think about how you can apply that today, for those listening, we don't really have paper memos anymore, but we have digital desktops.
Oh, the clutter.
If you have 400 random files and screenshots cluttering your computer desktop, or 12,000 unread emails sitting in your inbox, your digital environment is creating immense psychological friction. The discipline of inbox zero, or just clearing your digital workspace at the end of every single day, is the modern equivalent of Moses' table. It removes the friction so you can actually work. And we see this exact same environmental control with the Nobel Prize-winning author Toni Morrison.
Toni Morrison's story is a masterclass in fighting for the environment you need to succeed.
Truly.
Before she was a globally recognized author, she was a single working mother with 2 young boys. She also held a highly demanding full-time job as a senior editor at Random House in New York.
Which is an insane workload.
The sheer cognitive load of managing authors by day and raising toddlers by night is just overwhelming. If she had waited for a convenient time to write her own novels, she never would have written a single page.
So she engineered her environment. She woke up at 4 a.m. in the pitch dark.
Every day.
She made a cup of coffee and sat down to write before the sun even came up. Why? Because at 4 a.m., the world is asleep. Her children weren't asking for breakfast. The telephone wasn't ringing. Her authors weren't demanding edits.
It was her only window.
She recognized that her mind required total silence to access the deep creative flow necessary to write literature like Beloved. By physically beating the sun and beating the chaos of her household, she carved out this frictionless sanctuary for her art.
She really understood that discipline isn't just about output. It's about setting the actual conditions for output.
Exactly.
But this brings us to a highly counterintuitive pivot in our understanding of discipline. We so often fall into the trap of thinking discipline just means more.
Always more.
Working more hours, grinding harder, pushing your physical limits until you literally collapse. But the sources argue that in many cases, the ultimate display of discipline is actually the restraint to do less.
Load management.
It's the concept of load management.
Yes, in a culture that fetishizes the hustle, where people are, constantly bragging about only sleeping 4 hours a night on social media, we routinely mistake burnout for dedication.
It's toxic.
But the text is super clear. Burnout is not a badge of honor. Burnout is a profound failure of self-discipline. It means you lacked the self-control to pull your foot off the gas pedal before the engine blew up.
To illustrate this, the text contrasts 2 figures who are under immense pressure. The first is Floyd Patterson, the great heavyweight boxing champion.
Okay.
The night before a massive career-defining championship bout, the adrenaline, the anxiety, and the fear would be enough to keep anyone pacing the floor all night.
I would be throwing up, honestly.
But what did Patterson do? He was known for taking a deep restorative nap in his dressing room, just hours and sometimes minutes before walking out to the ring.
The physiological control required to do that is just
To
astounding.
just fall asleep, yes.
He was about to step into a ring where a highly trained killer was going to try to knock him unconscious in front of millions of people. But Patterson had the discipline to command his parasympathetic nervous system. He essentially told his body, worrying right now burns energy, I need this energy in the ring, shut down. And he slept.
Compare that magnificent control to the tragic story of James Forrestal. Forrestal was a brilliant man. He served as the first United States Secretary of Defense shortly after World War II.
A huge job.
He was tasked with unifying the military branches during the dawn of the Cold War. The pressure was unimaginable. But Forrestal's response to that pressure was the indiscipline of perpetual motion.
He just couldn't stop. He became completely consumed by his work. He refused to delegate. He refused to sleep.
He viewed rest as a weakness.
Right. He would work late into the night, every single night, operating on sheer cortisol and adrenaline. But human biology is unforgiving. You simply cannot cheat sleep indefinitely without paying a psychological tax.
And Forrestal paid it with his mind.
Yeah.
The lack of recovery completely deteriorated his cognitive function. He began losing massive amounts of weight. He developed severe paranoia, actually becoming convinced he was being followed by foreign agents.
It's so sad.
His decision-making became so erratic that he was forced to resign. He was admitted to Bethesda Naval Hospital for severe psychiatric exhaustion and depression. And tragically, unable to turn off the relentless grinding of his own mind, he stepped out of a 16th floor window of the hospital and ended his life.
It is a devastating story, and it serves as a massive, glaring warning light on the dashboard for anyone who thinks they can outwork their own biology.
You can't.
We are high-performance machines. You can run a Ferrari at 200 miles per hour, but you can't run it in the red zone for 3 days straight without the engine melting into a puddle.
Exactly.
If you want a decades-long career, if you want to actually be present for your children when they grow up, you have to have the discipline to go to sleep. You have to have the discipline to close the laptop on a Friday night and leave it closed until Monday.
Because managing that physical load is what allows us to transition from merely surviving to actually thriving.
Right.
And it serves as the perfect bridge to the next major pillar in the material, the inner domain.
The temperament.
Right, because if the body is the hardware, the temperament is the operating system. Lou Gehrig's story proves that the physical body can only take so much punishment. Eventually, the muscles fail if the mind driving them panics.
You can have the cardiovascular stamina of an ox, but if your emotions are fragile, if you lose your head the very moment you face criticism or chaos, you will self-destruct.
And the ultimate masterclass in ruling that internal temperament, according to our sources, is Queen Elizabeth II.
Think about the sheer scale of her public life. She reigned for 70 years.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
That is roughly 25,000 game days of intense, unrelenting public scrutiny. Every camera in the world is trained on her, waiting for a slip-up, a display of anger, a tear. And what is so remarkable is her absolute lack of public panic.
There was a running joke among her staff that she literally never appeared to sweat, no matter the temperature or the crisis.
Her internal emotional regulation was virtually impenetrable. And we aren't just talking about, keeping a straight face during a boring state dinner.
No, we're talking about real danger.
Visceral life-or-death stress tests. In 1981, she was participating in the Trooping the Color Parade, riding side saddle on a large horse through massive crowds.
Right.
Suddenly, a teenager in the crowd pulls out a replica pistol and fires 6 blank shots directly at the Queen from close range.
And the noise from a blank is deafening.
The horse rears up, terrified. The crowd starts screaming, panicking, assuming the Queen has literally just been assassinated. Most leaders would dive for cover, scream, or completely lose their composure.
I know I would.
What does she do? She doesn't even duck. She calmly reaches down, strokes the horse's neck to calm the animal, straightens her posture, and just keeps riding as if someone had merely popped a balloon.
Wow.
Another time, a heavy cement block was accidentally dropped from a bridge, smashing directly onto the roof of her car as it drove underneath. A terrifying, violent impact. She didn't scream, she just casually brushed the dust off her lap and asked if everyone was all right.
But the most psychologically intense example of her self-mastery happened in 1982.
Oh, this story is wild.
A man named Michael Fagan managed to evade palace security, scale the walls of Buckingham Palace, and climb through an unlocked window. He wanders the halls until he finds the Queen's private bedroom.
Unbelievable.
She wakes up in the middle of the night to find a strange man sitting on the edge of her bed, bleeding from a cut on his hand, holding a piece of a broken glass ashtray.
I mean, just put yourself in that bed for a second. The biological response to waking up to an intruder in the dark is pure, unadulterated terror.
Fight or flight.
The amygdala is screaming. Most of us would scream for help, grab a weapon, or just freeze in absolute panic. How does she handle it? She realizes the panic alarm button next to her bed isn't working, and the police officer stationed outside her door is off duty.
She is totally alone.
Completely alone with a potentially violent intruder. So she accesses that magisterial temperament. She sits up, pulls the covers up, and politely engages the man in conversation.
She literally interviews him about his family, his personal problems, and his life, keeping him calm and distracted for nearly 10 minutes until a maid finally walks in and they can summon security.
It is an act of unbelievable emotional compartmentalization. She recognized that panicking would only escalate the danger, so she disciplined her emotions to diffuse the threat.
Yeah.
Now, I have to push back a little here.
Sure.
Because when we celebrate someone who never shows emotion, who represses terror and anger so perfectly, it raises a modern psychological red flag.
I see where you're going.
Is this actually healthy? We are taught today that repressing emotions leads to trauma. Isn't she just rigidly suffocating her own humanity to act like a robotic symbol for the state?
It's a very valid critique, especially through a modern therapeutic lens.
Yeah.
But the Stoic interpretation of the text suggests she wasn't experiencing emotional death, nor was she repressing trauma in a toxic way.
Okay, so what was she doing?
Instead, she had mastered the use of boundaries and perspective. She operated her entire life by a very simple internal heuristic, a motto used often in the palace: better not.
Better not.
As in, better not overreact. Better not take this personal insult to heart. Better not get entangled in this specific political drama. It wasn't about suppressing feelings. It was about not letting external chaos dictate her internal state.
Ah, I see. She found freedom within the intense, suffocating constraints of her role. Because she couldn't leave, she had to control how she engaged.
Exactly.
There's this great anecdote about how she survived the endless, soul-crushing boredom of attending thousands of tedious events, ribbon cuttings, and slow parades.
Oh, it's so practical.
Instead of internally raging about how bored she was, which is what most of us do in a boring meeting, she would analyze the situation objectively to keep her mind sharp. She would observe the crowd like a detective. She'd noticed that a guest in the front row was wearing mismatched red socks.
Or notice the musicians.
Right. She'd noticed that a musician in the military band was slightly out of formation. She actively occupied her mind, turning a boring event into an exercise in observation rather than letting the boredom drag her into frustration.
She observed without absorbing. She was the calm eye of the hurricane, while the chaos swirled around her. And that ability to not react immediately ties directly into one of the most powerful tools in the inner domain.
Which is?
The pause, the discipline of delaying your reaction. And the material highlights George Washington as the absolute archetype for this specific skill.
People often picture Washington as this stoic, wooden figure on the dollar bill, but historically the man possessed a volcanic, terrifying temper.
Oh, he was known for it.
He was naturally fiery and aggressive, but he knew that if he let his temper rule his actions, he would destroy the Continental Army and the fragile new nation, so he developed the discipline of the pause.
Thomas Jefferson, who frequently disagreed with Washington, actually noted in awe that Washington would rarely act on first impulse. Yeah, he wouldn't make a decision until every single circumstance was, in Jefferson's words, maturely weighed.
This maps perfectly onto modern behavioral economics, specifically Daniel Kahneman's concept of fast and slow thinking.
Yes, System 1 and System 2.
Fast thinking System 1 is your gut instinct. It's the biological evolutionary reaction. It's the anger when someone cuts you off in traffic. It's the defensive urge when a coworker criticizes your project.
It's automatic.
Slow thinking System 2 is the philosophical analytical reasoning. The discipline Washington mastered was the ability to wedge a literal pause between the stimulus, the fast thought, and his response, the slow thought.
And think about how vital this is today. Technology has completely eliminated the pause.
Oh, it really has.
You receive an infuriating email from your boss at 9:00 p.m. System 1 screams, "How dare they?" And you immediately start typing a blistering, aggressive reply.
We've all been there.
If you hit send in that moment, you might ruin your career. The discipline of the pause is writing the email, leaving it in the drafts folder, and going to sleep.
Yes. You wake up the next morning, read it again through the lens of System 2, realize it was an overreaction, delete it, and handle the situation calmly. You put the situation up to the light and ask, is this actually as bad as my amygdala is telling me it is?
Exactly. And a massive component of that pause, of protecting your internal peace, is having the power to say the word no.
It is so hard to say no.
We exist in a culture of appeasement, where we feel deeply obligated to say yes to every request, every meeting, every social invitation, for fear of missing out or offending someone. But a temperate mind understands that boundaries are what actually protect your primary mission.
The examples of this in the source material are brilliant. The famous essayist E.B. White, the author of Charlotte's Web, was once invited to join a prestigious committee.
Right.
Now, the cultural expectation was to send a long, groveling letter explaining how honored he was, but how he was just so incredibly busy with various projects that he sadly couldn't attend.
The standard polite rejection.
Instead, White simply wrote back a one-sentence reply, "I must decline for secret reasons."
It's hilarious.
But it's profoundly disciplined. He owed them nothing.
Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor operated the exact same way. When she received invitations she didn't want to attend or requests she didn't want to fulfill, she would just say no.
Just no.
Just no. She wouldn't offer a massive, over-apologetic explanation or invent fake scheduling conflicts. She simply declined.
Because every single time you say yes to something non-essential, a meeting you don't need to be in, a project you don't really have time for, a social event you actually dread, you are simultaneously saying no to your main objective.
That's the opportunity cost.
You are stealing time from your family, your health, or your primary work. Managing your temperament means managing your ambition and your temptations. You have to put a governor on the engine.
That engine metaphor is perfect for ambition. Ambition is an incredibly powerful, necessary force. It's the energy that drives us to build, to create, to improve our lives.
Right.
But without the heavy braking system of temperance, ambition becomes highly destructive.
Right. Think of ambition as a massive 800 horsepower V8 engine strapped to your back.
Okay.
It is fantastic for powering you up the steep, treacherous mountain of success. It gets you through the late nights and the hard work. But if you don't have brakes, if you lack temperance, what happens when you reach the summit?
You don't just stop.
The engine doesn't just stop, it keeps firing. And without brakes, you launch right off the cliff on the other side of the mountain.
We see this exact trajectory with conquerors like Alexander the Great, who couldn't stop conquering until his army mutinied and he drank himself to death.
Or modern examples, too.
We see it with modern CEOs who build billion-dollar companies but then commit fraud to get the next billion, destroying their entire legacy. We see it with celebrities who achieve massive fame but destroy their families and their bodies because they cannot regulate their appetites.
They reach the top, but because they have no internal braking system, they crash.
Which is why the final transition in our deep dive is the ultimate goal of the Stoic journey.
The magisterial.
Yes. We've covered the body, we've covered the mind. Now we reach the third phase, the magisterial, the soul.
And the magisterial plane is really what happens when you combine that Lou Gehrig physical stamina with that Queen Elizabeth emotional restraint. And you apply it in the real world amidst the corrupting forces of power, chaos, and leadership.
It is the incredibly rare ability to possess the world, to hold immense power over others, but somehow keep your soul intact.
The foundational rule of operating on this magisterial plane is beautifully simple, but agonizingly difficult to practice. And it is this: be tolerant with others, but strict with yourself.
We see the genesis of this in the relationship between the Roman Emperor Antoninus and his adopted son and eventual successor Marcus Aurelius.
Antoninus is such a fascinating figure because he held absolute unchecked power in Rome.
Total power.
He wasn't a democratically elected leader with a system of checks and balances. He was literally a god on earth. He could have indulged in the most depraved gluttony like Caligula or Nero.
He could have executed his enemies for fun.
He could have taken anything he wanted. But how did he live? He lived incredibly simply. He worked tirelessly from dawn to dusk, managing the administrative bureaucracy of the empire. He treated his absolute power as a heavy, solemn duty to the Roman people, not as a personal playground for his ego.
And Marcus Aurelius, as a young man, watched this closely.
He absorbed all of it.
He learned a profound lesson about leadership and discipline. True discipline is not about lecturing other people. You don't build a great culture by screaming at your subordinates for failing to meet your standards.
Right.
True discipline is infectious entirely by example.
Abraham Lincoln operated the exact same way. His personal secretaries during the Civil War, John Hay and John Nicolay, lived with him in the White House.
They saw everything.
They noted that Lincoln was endlessly forgiving of the failings of his generals and his staff. He tolerated massive egos and incompetence if it served the larger cause. But he never asked perfection of anyone but himself.
He bore the unbearable weight of the war internally.
And honestly, for you listening right now, whether you manage a massive corporate team or just manage your own household, think about how liberating this concept is.
It removes a massive psychological burden.
Yes. You don't have to police the entire world. You don't have to exhaust your emotional energy being outraged that your coworkers, your neighbors, or people on the internet aren't meeting your high moral or professional standards.
Which is exhausting.
Trying to force everyone else to be disciplined is a fool's errand. You just have to ruthlessly police yourself. If you embody the standard, your example will naturally radiate outward. People will elevate their own game simply by being in your presence without you ever having to say a single word.
That leads directly to a beautiful paradox concerning power and leadership that the sources highlight.
What's that?
The undisciplined mind views power as a mechanism to acquire luxury and avoid hardship. But the disciplined mind views power as an obligation to absorb hardship for the sake of others. There is a story about General James Mattis, the former U.S. Secretary of Defense. When he was a Marine commander, he caught a young lieutenant shirking his duties, trying to take an easier path because of his officer rank.
Big mistake.
Mattis confronted him and delivered a legendary rebuke. He said, "The privilege of command is command. You don't get a bigger tent."
You don't get a bigger tent.
Yeah.
I love that so much. The undisciplined CEO thinks, I made it to the top, so I deserve the corner office, the corporate jet, and the 3-hour lunches, while my employees sweat in the cubicles.
Exactly.
The magisterial leader thinks, I made it to the top, so I must take the smaller tent. I must eat last, and I must absorb the worst of the stress, so my team has the space and resources they need to execute.
It's servant leadership in its purest form.
Yeah.
The ancient Greeks had a similar story about Xenophon. He was a military leader tasked with leading thousands of Greek mercenaries on a desperate, starving retreat out of hostile Persian territory.
Okay, setting the scene.
During a brutal march in the freezing snow, a foot soldier began complaining loudly about Xenophon. The soldier yelled that it was easy for Xenophon to give orders because he was riding comfortably on a horse, while the soldiers had to trudge through the mud carrying heavy brass shields.
Oh, wow. And how does Xenophon react? Because the undisciplined response would be to have the soldier flogged for insubordination to protect his own ego.
Exactly.
But Xenophon possesses magisterial discipline. He immediately leaps down off his horse, he rips the heavy shield out of the complaining soldier's hands, and Xenophon marches the rest of the day in the mud, carrying the soldier's shield himself, while leading the army from the front.
Just incredible.
He weaponized his own physical discomfort to shame the complaining soldier and inspire the rest of the men.
Because the ultimate flex of self-discipline isn't acquiring power. It's the ability to voluntarily relinquish it.
Like Washington.
Yes. George Washington fundamentally altering the course of human history by stepping down after 2 terms as president. He was universally beloved. He easily could have been crowned King of America. His officers even wanted him to do it.
They practically begged him.
But he had the internal restraint to walk away from ultimate power and return to his farm, setting the precedent for peaceful democratic transition.
Winston Churchill did something similar. After World War II, having saved Western civilization from the Nazis, he was offered the highest honor the British monarchy can bestow.
A dukedom.
The Queen offered him a dukedom. He could have become the Duke of London, elevating himself to the highest tier of the aristocracy, but he politely refused.
Why?
Because he didn't need a fancy title to validate his existence. His internal domain was entirely secure. He wanted to die exactly as he had lived, as a commoner, as Winston Churchill.
They possessed the power, but they did not let the power possess them. And maintaining that level of self-mastery in the face of intense pressure requires a very specific quality. Ernest Hemingway famously defined courage as grace under pressure. And in the context of our sources, discipline is the engine that produces that grace.
Grace under pressure is the absolute perfect way to describe the discipline of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement's commitment to nonviolent resistance.
Absolutely.
If we look at this through the lens of pure biology, when a human being is physically attacked, beaten with batons, attacked by dogs, sprayed with fire hoses, the deeply ingrained evolutionary instinct is to fight back.
Of course.
It is biological wiring to protect yourself with violence.
To override that biological instinct, to intentionally suppress the urge to strike back, and to take the physical hit in order to elevate a cause and show the entire world the undeniable moral high ground. That requires a level of self-mastery that is almost incomprehensible to most people.
It really is.
It is the magisterial soul imposing its will over the screaming instincts of the body.
And what's crucial to understand is that this kind of discipline isn't about being a rigid, unbending brick wall.
No, not at all.
We often conflate discipline with stubbornness. But true magisterial discipline requires immense flexibility. It adapts to reality.
Like Musashi.
Right. The legendary Japanese samurai Miyamoto Musashi constantly warned his students against getting locked into rigid, formalized styles of sword fighting. He argued that if you are completely committed to one strict stance, you become predictable, and your opponent will kill you.
You have to adapt.
True discipline is the fluidity to assess the chaotic battlefield and adapt your technique to whatever the moment requires without losing your core principles.
You have to be like water.
Yeah.
Queen Elizabeth demonstrated this exact kind of flexibility in a very different context in 1965.
Yeah.
She decided to award the MBE member of the Order of the British Empire to a rock and roll band.
The Beatles.
The Beatles.
And the traditionalists absolutely lost their mind.
Oh, they were furious.
Military veterans were literally mailing their medals back to the palace in disgust. They thought honoring 4 mop-topped musicians was a complete desecration of a sacred institution.
But the Queen understood a profound Roman Stoic concept called the mos maiorum. It basically translates to the custom of the ancestors, or the unwritten code of tradition.
Okay.
The undisciplined mind thinks honoring the mos maiorum means freezing time, never changing a single rule, and worshiping the ashes of the past.
But that's not true discipline.
Right. The Queen knew that true discipline means carrying the fire, not the ashes. She recognized that the world was changing rapidly in the 1960s. If the monarchy was going to survive, it had to adapt and acknowledge the new cultural reality.
Giving the Beatles the MBE was a highly disciplined strategic move to ensure the institution remained relevant.
As the famous quote goes, if things are going to stay the same, things are going to have to change.
So let's pull all of these threads together. We've traveled from the dusty crossroads of ancient Greece to a baseball diamond in the 1920s to a quiet desk at 4 a.m. to the halls of Buckingham Palace.
We've covered a lot of ground.
What does this all mean for you listening right now? The overarching thesis of Ryan Holiday's work and the Stoic philosophy is that discipline is not a punishment. It is the only path to human flourishing.
Exactly.
Whether we're talking about Lou Gehrig building his body in a gymnasium, Toni Morrison fighting for her cognitive space, or George Washington biting his tongue to save a nation, it all comes down to action. Discipline is not a belief system you just read about. Discipline is what you do.
And the most empowering part of this entire framework is that you always have a choice. The great American author John Steinbeck, in his magnum opus East of Eden, spends a significant portion of the book analyzing the Hebrew word timshel.
Timshel.
It translates to thou mayest, not thou wilt, meaning your fate is predetermined, not thou must, meaning you are forced into it. Timshel means thou mayest.
You have agency.
You have agency. You have the ability to conquer your impulses. The path of least resistance, that beautiful goddess offering a life of vice, ease, and endless scrolling, is always going to be standing right in front of you. But the path of discipline is what actually determines your destiny.
And here is a final provocative thought I want to leave you with, something for you to mull over today as you go back to your workspace, your commute, and your family.
Let's hear it.
If discipline is truly infectious by example, as we saw with Antoninus and Marcus Aurelius, then the opposite must also be true, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Indiscipline is contagious. So every time you choose to hit snooze on your alarm, every time you snap in anger at a coworker instead of pausing, every time you take the bigger tent for yourself instead of serving your team, who is watching you?
Who's looking to you for the standard?
Who is observing your actions and silently lowering their own standards because of your example? Your self-discipline isn't just dictating your own destiny. It might very well be shaping the destiny of the children, the colleagues, and the friends who look up to you.
That is a staggering responsibility, but it's also a profound opportunity to lead by action.
Thank you so much for taking this deep dive into the source material with us. Until next time, remember the crossroads. The choice is yours.